evening, everyone. We're just going to kick off. Thank you for joining us on this cold winter night. I hope you have a blanket and some hot chocolate and you're ready. Show of hands, who has been here before and who hasn't heard of the Interaction Design Foundation at all? Cool. So the Interaction Foundation is a collaborative knowledge sharing community and an education platform for anyone who's interested in design. It doesn't matter if your background is design or not. They teach across a great breadth and depth. And they are involved in the community, and there are multiple courses available. We will attach some to the slide deck, which we share at the end. And if you want more information, you can go to their website that's on the screen in front of you. Our Johannesburg community is now the biggest in Africa, with just over 300 members. So we'd love to hear from you during the course of this evening. So please go through onto the Miro board and paste your details on the IDF tree. And I'll paste the link in the chat just now for you to do that. And I'm now going to hand over to our guest speaker, Kat. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm just gonna share my screen. Hopefully I can get this right. There we are. Okay, I think everyone can see my screen. Awesome. Okay. So my name is Katlego Hlongwane. Everyone calls me Kat, and you're also welcome to just call me Kat with a K, please. And today I'm going to be talking about everyday CX. And the role of this particular conversation is that I want us to demystify what the role of the CX'r is. So CX is a big discipline, bigger than what we think, even though we don't know much about it. At least I'm assuming right now. So I'm not going to be speaking about everything that has to do with CX. I'm going to be focusing our conversation on my journey, how I got to be a CX designer, because that's the current role that I'm fulfilling. I'm going to talk about what is customer experience, and also we're going to look at the role of the CX'r and then people who want to move into a CX role. All right, so just a little bit about me so we can get comfortable and you can get to know me. So I am a city girl turned country girl. What that means is that I was actually born in Johannesburg, born and bred, definitely a city slicker. I drive like a taxi driver, and I'm a pretty good driver too. But in the past year and a bit, I actually moved to the Lowveld, which is Mpumalanga. I live in a small town called White River. It is tiny, guys. It's literally the sticks, especially if you come from Johannesburg. And but I'm loving it. And part of that is that I get to grow a garden. So my daughter and I, you can see her, she features quite a bit in my life because it's just me and her. And she is the person who I hang out with. She's like my best friend. She's my travel buddy. You can see her. This is us in Cape Town. You can see us taking selfies. In fact, she's the one who got me comfortable with selfies. If you look at the picture on the far bottom left, that's actually me. I was pregnant at that time and I was working at the coffee shop, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. So currently, we adventure a lot. So we do move around a bit in the Lowveld just to discover what it is and just how beautiful we have this spot of Eden in our country. We got goldfishes, which was random. Still trying to acclimatize to that. I don't really know. Oh yes, because we can't get pets, so we got goldfishes. And it's weird because they die. And then it's a tragic moment in the house, and then we bury them in the garden, and we just like, it will, give food to our strawberries and tomatoes. I am a former exchange student. I spent 1 year in Brazil, so I speak a little bit of Portuguese. I am in that picture holding the South African flag. I also love languages, I love culture, and I think that's probably why I am a CX designer, because I'm all about people, talking to them, learning about them. If you look at the bottom, there's a picture of Nigerian food. I wouldn't recommend you eat Nigerian food and let it stroll off right, but hey, just had to show so I'm also into Africa research. So I love to do a lot of research around Africa and just learn more about our continent and see how we can design really personalized and relevant experiences for them. So how did I actually get into this? So here is this picture that I told you about on the far bottom left, me working in a coffee shop. So I'm actually a barista. I learned how to make really good coffee, and I'm pretty good at it, and I have a discerning mouth around coffee. You guys have probably seen that YouTube story about the 2 coffee shops. And in that story, it talks about how you have 1 coffee shop. No, you have 2 coffee shops on the same street, and one of them is just more popular than the other, but they have the same price, they have the same product, but one is just doing a lot more better. And this story is typically told from a service design perspective, okay? And they try to basically use that analogy to explain to you what is a differentiator when it comes to services and maybe even products, what you can actually do and give to your customer to get them coming back. Coffee shop B outperforms coffee shop A because it applies a human-centric perspective to their service. They shift and they recreate the coffee shop based on their customers' needs. So I worked in such a coffee shop. Remember the picture? Not as sophisticated as that story, and not sophisticated in terms of their approach to customer experience or even having a human-centric mindset. However, it was purposeful. So what this particular coffee shop did is that it focused a lot on the experience that it was giving its customers in terms of how we service them. So the friendliness of the people, as well as what the coffee shop looked like, the ambience, creating almost like an experience that it was an oasis in the middle of the city, because that's where it was, in the middle of Joburg CBD. And this type of experience and working in that particular culture, it actually gave me an interest into how do you better customer service? Like, what do you need to do in order to create a type of experience that makes your customers keep coming back? Because, hey, at that time, that was my only job, and I needed it to help me to fund my studies and just even fund my lifestyle. All right. So I want you to think of something that within experiences that we create for our customers, and a lot of us are designers, a lot of us are working with people, or rather a product or service that is going to be touched by people, and it would make them come back to a particular brand or company. So there's things that we have to pay attention to, and that is things like product. And that could be that coffee that you are making, the quality of it. It could be the people. So who are you actually hiring? Do they have the personality and the drive in order to give about a experience that your customer wants? The price. Price is also pretty important, especially in this day and age, because we know that it is a factor in whether we're going to buy something or not. Ambience. So in this coffee shop, definitely that loungy music, that jazzy music that just creates that whole smoky feel that comes when you're in a coffee shop and makes you feel that you're outside of your general city setting. The quality of the product. And then as well as location and access. So can you actually get there? Is it easy? And surprisingly, it was within the setting of this coffee shop that I actually met someone who introduced me to a concept called market research and asked me if I could write, and I was an analyst, and if I'd like to try. And that's how I stumbled into this field. So I started off as a market researcher, where I interned at first, then got into a junior position, and then worked my way up to be a mid researcher. So I did everything within the small research company, learning about how to recruit participants for focus groups, how to write a survey, how to actually do analysis, to be in field, to gather insights, and then create an actual report. So this happened in 2014. I was also a young mom at that time. But I have to admit, I think I was driven enough to really push it and realize that this was the field that I wanted to go to, because also it allows me to speak to a lot of people. Then I moved on and I went to a bigger research company. And here, this is where I actually started to learn about something called design research. And this is research that is done in the purpose of creating certain products and services. And yes, this becomes more customer centric in terms of that we look at the heart, we try to really understand what the client needs are. So it's not just about a marketing perspective, which is where market research sits, but more it's about getting into the essence of this research that will help us to create meaningful products and services. And within this research company, I actually did CX as well as UX research. And then we fast forward to 2020, and in 2020, I actually became a CX designer. Now, my pull to actually wanting to become a CX designer and not stop within just the research field was because for me, I always found that there was a gap. So I could create research products and then deliver the report and then even have my recommendations, but I never knew what happened afterwards. You know, low-key celebrating some of the work that I've done. I'd kind of only see the implementation when maybe it goes into market a couple of months later, but it's not like the client will tell you and say, oh, hey, we've done this, we took on your recommendation. I would just kind of stumble upon it, you know. So I wanted to be involved more in the implementation as well as the strat that it takes in order to create amazing experiences for clients. So that's when I moved into the consultancy space. And I did this through IQBusiness. So that's the current business that I'm working for. And they focus on research, consultancy, as well as contracting. So yes, I'm going to shout out to the company that I'm working for, because you have to pay props. And what this has allowed me to do is that I work within a team of people who are really, really knowledgeable. And a lot of them come from UI and UX. And we have a small CX team. However, you know, like all CXs will tell you, and if we have any on this call, we definitely pack a big punch. So this is where I'm currently at with IQBusiness, and they have placed me at Nedbank, which happens to be one of my favorite brands. I'm not going to tell you why, because I don't want to get into the whole debate with the financial institutions, but I have to say that they are moving forward. And yeah, then from here on now, what I'm really focusing on is that as I continue to just hone in my skills and become more of an expert in what I do, I realized that there've been many people on my journey who've been able to help me, who've given me knowledge, who've trained me up, who've taken up the time in order to get me to where I am right now. So I believe in giving back. And the way that I do that is by mentoring. So I'm quite big on that, about mentoring other people, opening doors for them, giving them the type of advice and guidance, even support that they need in order for them to navigate this whole experience design terrain that we're currently sitting in. Okay, enough about me. I've been talking about myself. Let's actually talk about why we're here. So what is customer experience? I think it's important for us just to have a foundation so we know where we're starting from when I do talk about customer experience, because I know that there are some misconceptions as to what customer experience is and where it fits in. So just to read what this says so that I don't get this definition wrong. CX is the result of every interaction the customer has with the business, product, or service, and everything that impacts their perception of the business and their decision to continue coming back. It is an approach and understanding of the customer and how the product or service fulfills their needs. So it's definitely about customer needs, but also it's about the continuous interaction from them first finding out about a business or product or service all the way until they start to advocate, show loyalty, but also keep coming back. We're very much concerned about keeping our customers. You know, what is it about the experience that can have them to advocate for us, and then also not to leave. But even if they should leave, it also means that it's important to have that particular journey described and mapped out, because you want them to also leave in a good way. You know, you don't want those, hello, Peter, try to cancel my Telkom account and they said it would take me 18 months and I had to pay an extra 10 grand. Like, there's horror stories like that when it comes to retaining customers. So at its essence, just like any other of the design fields, customer experience is about being human-centric, and it is a focus on the customer or user, and they are at the heart of everything that we do. So I'm sure some of you have seen this particular diagram. So CX does encompass quite a bit of the experience. And yeah, again, it's all about the heart of the customer, and that's what we focus on as well. So also now let's look at a definition. And this one is from Interaction Design Foundation. They have a cool definition about what customer experience design is. And they say that it is the process of design teams follow to optimize customer experiences at all touch points before, during, and after conversion. They leverage customer-centered strategies to delight customers at each step of the conversion journey and nurture strong customer brand relationships. So there we get it again, that interaction that continues the relationship. And I think what we can really pull out from this particular definition is that it is about enhancing the customer experience. We make it better, we make it memorable. Touch points, any channel or platform that belongs to the business or brand that the customer will engage with. The focus of the experience is not only about onboarding, which I think we do generally look at quite a bit, like how do we easily get them on board? However, we don't think about how continuous use or servicing and right up until the end when they decide to leave or advocate for us. And also here, it's also about tracking that relationship before, during, and after. Before also meaning, how do they find out about us? How do we actually start to show up in the places where they look for services or products, you know, social media, this could be word of mouth, yeah. So the objective here is relationship building with the customer over time. Okay, so I want to take you into an example of when customer experience didn't go well. And I think some of you might actually have seen this story or know about it, but it has actually come up in the news a few weeks ago. So here we have Old Mutual. So Old Mutual had a problem a couple of years ago where they had a client who wanted to claim because their loved one had actually passed away and they wanted to claim the funeral benefits. So I think within like the Black community, we know pretty well about Old Mutual as a financial services provider, especially for funeral cover. Like it's Old Mutual. I don't know. I know very few Black people who don't have a policy with them. I mean, when I think of insurance, I think of Old Mutual as well. So it's got quite a big brand image and reputation within the Black community. So what happened in this particular set was that they rejected the claim or they delayed in order to pay the claim. It's not quite sure. Even when you read the articles around it, it's almost like, you know, this wishy-washy, Old Mutual doesn't want to take responsibility. They're trying to push it back to the client. They're trying to say it's like almost there was a misunderstanding. But what was very clear was that this was a branch that was in it was in KZN, not sure if it was rural KZN, but it was definitely around the townships, not in your city centers. It's not a Joburg, Sandton type of branch. And this claim was not paid out. So what they did was that they brought the corpse to the Old Mutual branch to say, here's your proof, my loved one has died. Now, that's pretty extreme. And I think that for a client to actually go to that measure, to do that, to prove something, it's pretty bad. You can only imagine what the desperate case is. I also think that a lot of times is that within the processes that businesses create, they forget that there is an emotional sentiment to how people decide to deal with a particular business product. So if you think about it, that within certain communities is that funerals are really important. There is the whole catering that needs to be done. There's also the hosting of families that come from all over. But there's a grieving process that is very sentimental to that particular group of people. And that money needed to pay out for them to even fulfill that. So whereas a business might look at it as a very hard, cold process to follow, for the client, it's not. For them, it's an emotional journey that they're going through. And I think at this point, you would need a business to actually take care of that, you know, to be very mindful. And one could even say that maybe they had not put their processes to the test. They didn't actually put these in front of customers and said that like, hey, what is the best way for us to communicate with you? How long do you need the money to be paid out? You know, just that type of research and feedback to understand that this is the best way that we service our customers and not just making money. So this became a big media blowout. I mean, you can see it is on the news as well as on social media, and you know social media will tear you apart. If your customer experience is bad, trust Twitter to tell you about it. Okay, so now that you have a pretty good understanding, I hope, of what customer experience is and, and what we do here, I want to actually give you a bit of an in-depth into what is the role. So what is the role of the CX'r? Okay, so I'm sure you've all seen that meme that says what people think I do. So here, what my colleagues think I do, I think my colleagues think that I'm an actual like graphic designer, like I work with tech and I make like beautiful images and I'm pretty good like creatively. No, that's not me. What society thinks I do, a lot of people actually think that I sit in a call center and I'm servicing people from a customer service perspective. No, that is still not what I do. Okay, but my mom thinks I do. Now, I haven't asked her, but I think my mom thinks I'm playing games because I'm constantly on the computer. So that's why I stuck that picture. And I think, yeah, probably playing games with my kid as well. So what I think I do, I think I create amazing life-changing experiences where people are just like mind blown by what is going on. I hope so. But what I actually do, I do a lot of journeys. I work a lot on post-its. Now that we're mostly virtual, I do a lot of post-its on Miro. So yes, I am frameworking on journeys. I am trying to understand what customers are going through, trying to get that insight in order to create the strat for them to have better experiences. So what is the role of the CX'r? So the CX'r is the custodian of the customer journey. They ensure that through design and decisions and strategy that they fulfill the experiences that better the relationships between the customer and the business on each touch point. Remember, touch points came a lot earlier. So yes, for us here, we are looking at almost like an omni-channel experience. So a lot of the times we want to be able to see, like, what does the company have? Do they have a website? Do they have an office, like a branch? Do they have a USSD, an app? And across all those channels there that a customer could interact with, is it speaking a single message, a single service about the brand to the customer? So that's really important. A lot of the times now, especially as a CX designer, I am looking at digital experiences, which means that I want to see what really matters to the customer when they're engaging with a business digitally. So I work within digital transformation teams because we know that is where we're currently going right now. It is all about digital transformation. That is the buzzword. And then also I ensure that the customer is represented and designed for. So most of the time you find that you're in a team where the voice of the customer isn't there. And because the business has got so many objectives and they have a lot of concerns, you're the person who has to advocate for the customer in those spaces, hence custodian. So we are the custodian of the end-to-end customer journey. And this ensures that the team have a clear view of the direction that we want to go when it comes to designing for them. Also, we work with the CX'r. We empower them in order for them to understand what the journey is and how they can translate it accordingly whenever they are designing digital products. As a consultant, I advocate for the customer and the user within the team. Okay, so looking a little bit closely into the role of the CX'r. So often we're looking at customer persona creation. We understand that with personas, we're able to create empathy so that the business is able to understand them a lot better. Nothing like having a face to that particular disastrous experience. Customer journey mapping and blueprinting. Yes, a lot of journey mapping and blueprinting now. Not all CXs are doing blueprinting, but it is becoming a norm. And I'm doing more blueprintings this year than I did a year ago. Research and insight. So a common thing that I've seen within CXs is that many of them do come from a research background, or they do have a really good understanding, at least on how to pull insights from research. And also what is important is that we also align the business strats to the overall CX strat. Like we don't sit in opposition with the business. And I think it's important. I'm sure some of you who have worked with the CX'r might have felt that the CX'r might be a bit confrontational, or they always seem to be speaking a little bit against the business. It's not necessarily true. Our purpose is that we actually have to bring together the customer and the business. This is really important because they have goals, the business, and the customer also have needs. And when we're able to marry that and actually create a strat that is appealing to both, that's when the magic truly happens. And we also get that essential business support, which is what we need. All right. So what about journey mapping? I don't think you can talk about a CX'r without actually talking about journey mapping. So let's look at a definition here. Okay. So a customer journey, it is data often fails to communicate the frustrations and experiences of customers. A story can do that. And one of the best storytelling tools in business is the customer journey map. So I thought that this was a pretty cool quote because it actually says it brings upon a story. And I think that is what a journey map is. Sometimes when you look at a journey map, you think like, oh my word, there's so much colors, there's lots of words, there's even images, like what am I looking at? But the purpose of it, it really is to communicate the story, the real experience that your customer is going through, especially when you're looking at it from an as-is perspective. So let me give you a couple of examples of journey maps that I just pulled from the internet. All right, so this is a journey map that's done in Miro, and Miro has got pretty cool templates. And I would also advise that if you're starting off within journey mapping, you want to definitely use something like Miro because it's a tool that gives you what you need, especially when it comes to identifying the elements around journey mapping. So if I was to even tell you really what goes into a journey map, would be here all night because that is a separate discussion on its own. But journey maps are fun. So here you can see that within this journey map is that it also looks at things like the customer's pain points, what are they thinking, and also, as well as what are they feeling. Another map here, this one is looking particularly at the purchasing journey of a customer here. This one doesn't have as many images, but again, pain points are being identified. And also here they put in solutions, which could be potentially how you solve for those pain points and the ways that you can actually innovate and improve on the journey. Then we have another map here, and this one, we see the feelings over here, and their solutions are called opportunities. So yeah, this is a journey map. I can tell you now that a journey map is not a user journey. These are very different. The purpose of a journey map here and how I'm defining it is that it is a visual representation of what a customer goes through to achieve a particular goal. The customer's feelings, thoughts, and stumbling blocks, which can also be called pain points, are important to gain an understanding into the experience. How do we go about creating a customer journey? What do we need to look for? So one of the key things is that we can actually observe a journey. So you can look at it from an observation perspective where maybe you are, say, doing a branch journey or a shopping journey physically, and you would look to see what is going on and then start to jot that down. Then also user interviews. This is probably the best way to get that insight because then you're also getting their thoughts and their feelings as they go through the journey, which is what creates that empathy and begins to actually show the heart of what is going on in the journey. All right. So I also want to just present to you just a little bit about how you can actually switch into a CX role. But before I do that, I want to tell you a story because as you saw, that customer journeys are about storytelling, and I like storytelling. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story. So as I mentioned earlier, that I started in market research, and there was a time that I was working for a nappy brand, and it was a project where we had to find out why the tools that they had created, it was an educational platform using USSD, an app on how to educate pregnant and new moms on how to better take care of themselves and their babies. So I think the app would actually allow, would engage with you from the moment you sign on during your pregnancy, which would be women within the low income segment. They would be going to the government clinic, so they'd have a lady, an ambassador who would come in there and basically give them nappy samples, but also ask them to sign in, opt into this platform by filling out a form. And they would get engagement from the moment they filled out that form all the way to the point where the baby was about 2 years old, which is, I think, that's when most kids have already started to potty train and leave the nappy. So now within this particular project, one of the key concerns was that they're not getting much feedback and participation from the people who've signed on. So they had hundreds of people, because you can only imagine how many women go through the government clinics, across the country who, and they opt in. So they wanted to know, like, what is going on? What do the moms think about this particular channel? And what is the best way for them, to get them connected and engaged? So I had to recruit people, like cold call. And I'm telling you, this was like the first couple of months of me actually starting at this research company. So almost like cold call from a list and talk to them, trying to get them to sign, like to come into the focus groups. And now, one of the conversations that I had was that there was a woman who she herself, when we started talking and said to her, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, would you be interested? She said to me that she can't actually participate because she lost her baby during labor, but she's been getting all these SMSs about this particular platform and also information around like her baby's development, who obviously didn't make it. And for her, she felt like this was sad because she didn't want to be reminded constantly, which could have been twice a month, depending on how often they engage with the person, about what had happened. And she asked me, how do I opt out of this? How do I get them to stop sending me these messages? And this is when I realized that a lot of the times when we do research, especially from market research perspective, we have a particular objective that we are trying to achieve. And for her, when she signed on, she didn't think that this was going to happen. But now she's almost like stuck with it, with these constant reminders. And even I couldn't tell her, like, how do I get like her name off this list? Who has this list? What department is sitting it in? And almost like just trying to track and feed that information across was like, it became hard. And I realized, like, hang on, there's something to this. There's more that I can do, or maybe there's an area that I should also be exploring. And one of the things was also that, like, when I was actually prompted to sign up, download the app, sign up onto the USSD, and I realized that there was no opt-out button. There was no prompt around it. You couldn't actually stop these messages being sent from you. And then I thought, oh, heck, that's amazing. I want to be the person who puts that button in or tells the people that you need that button, and not from a market research perspective, but to actually sit with those design teams. And I believe that these are the kind of experience that led me to be where I am right now. Okay, enough storytelling. For those of you who are interested in transitioning to become a CX'r, all right, so the cool thing about CX is that we're not so technology dependent that you need to learn a pretty difficult tool. So I can still say that I'm only learning how to wireframe now. And that's only because I feel that it's needed for where I am at this point in my career in order to be able to create faster prototypes that I can actually put in front of users and customers. So for us is that we focus more on the research side. Like I said, if you can pull insights, you might not be able to do research as much as a market researcher can, like developing the surveys, but you do have the design researchers out there who can do that. If you are able to get an interest on it and are happy to even advocate and focus on research, that's awesome. You need to also understand business objectives. So generally, when you go into this, you want to know what the business is trying to achieve. Why are they doing this type of product or service, and what value it's going to bring to them. And then also, like I said, turn findings into insights. That's good. As long as you can draw out that human truth, you are halfway there. Then also focus on the omni-channel experience. So as much as, yes, everything is moving towards digital and we're all talking about apps and just downloading the latest app, you do find that there are services that sit outside of the app, but that are very important to the business or the brand. So like that could be, say, your checkers versus your checkers 60/60. Those are also important. And you want to make sure that you have the same type of experience, whether someone has decided to go physically into a store or order online. And then journey map and identifying opportunities. So this is also really key because you will be journey mapping a lot. That is the key deliverable for a CX'r, but also to identify what those opportunities are, that once you've identified the pain points, how do we move forward? How do we actually understand what the business is able to do versus the customer's needs, and actually pull that through into a strat that can guide the business onto creating a better experience? And then what I'm seeing more is that you need to have a future and innovative mindset. So it's really important that, you don't get stuck on the problem or on, we can't do this, because there are always opportunities to innovate, and you can see how quickly we're progressing within the design field. And I do think that this also helps when you collaborate with fellow designers, especially your product designers, your UXers, to say, well, this is a problem I have. What do you think? How can we move forward from here if you do kind of struggle with innovation? All right. So I think I've spoken quite a bit, and this is the end of my presentation. And do we have any questions?
There's quite a few questions in the chat here, Kat. So I don't know if you want us to read those out to you, or if whoever's added questions in the chat, maybe feel comfortable sharing it out loud.
Yeah, I think maybe if we can chat about it and make it just a little bit more interactive.
Hi, Kat, and thank you for putting this together. It was quite informative. Yeah, so my question is more around, do you see a difference between UX and CX, right? Because you'd find that in industry, you'd be called to do CX work, and then you end up doing a lot of UX. And when they say UX, they then throw a bunch of screens at you. So I think, to me, there's a difference, but I wanted to understand if you see any difference between the two.
So I do think that it has to do with the maturity. And this is an awesome question, because I often sit in projects where they think I'm a UXer and I'm a CX'r, and I'm very purposeful about what I do. And I also articulate to them that there's certain things that a UXer does that I actually can't do. I haven't learned. What is important, though, is that when we are sitting in those spaces, is find out from your business what they're trying to achieve and what they think your role is, so that if you are able to accommodate that, you can, because many CXs can actually, do wireframes all the way until prototyping level, where you go low fidelity to high fidelity. But some of us actually can't. Where best can you actually add the value? So for me, the major difference is definitely within the artifacts that you produce. So a customer journey map that is thorough, that really explains what the journey is. If you can get it from end to end, I can tell you now that someone who has been specializing in UX for quite some time, they probably are not doing journey maps to that level, because they are focusing more on the wireframes and developing it from that concept. But also, there are certain functionalities that even as a CX, I don't get. I'll leverage on my UX and be like, what is this? I needed to do the roundy thingy to tell me that it does this, and that's where I think it's important for us, even within our disciplines, to really articulate, this is what we do. And if you are able to do an in-between, that's awesome. But also we shouldn't sell ourselves short. We are in these fields for a particular reason. And I think that when it comes to cost cutting, you do find certain companies, or even a project, they just want someone who can do it all. They want a CX researcher to a CX designer, and then to a UX designer, all the way through, because then they're paying for one person for all those services. And those are 3 different roles. I hope I answered your question.
No, sure, you did. So then how do you push back? So in my case, right, I started in consulting, and I started working a lot in a lot of these organizations, whereby we bring in the process, and then we will then obviously work at such a level that when we say UX, we do the research piece of work. We go through the entire end-to-end process, which then includes wireframe journey mapping before we start anything. Journey mapping would then be a part of that. Then we will get on to that conceptual stage, whereby we then work with the digital side of things. But sometimes we don't necessarily do the UX, not the UX. We don't necessarily build any digital solutions. So I think, yeah, it's a bit confusing. How do you then push back from your side to say, hold up, no, this is not what I do. This is something else?
So it does depend on the maturity of the organization. First, if it is mature in terms of their design, there's a design ops team, you won't find yourself in those positions. It'll be quite rare. When it is time, though, to push back, understand what their need is. You need to take business into account. And sometimes we forget as designers, that's why I think we do have a contention with business, because we seem like these arty people who do things that others don't understand. And and business can be quite cold and very specific in what they want, especially with their goals. So understand what they're trying to achieve, and then lay it out to say that this is what I can do, but this I can't do. You will need this type of person. And then also show them the benefits. I think that also we need to remember within us as designers, when you pull and do the research, then you go into taking that research, developing it into insights so that you can get a journey map, and your journey map is the one that's supposed to be the strategic lens that feeds into what the designs look like. You get a bias. And even I thought, like, I also challenged myself to say, hang on, if I'm sitting within this position, and yes, I can do all of these, should I be doing it? And will I not actually be creating a bias where I'm now supporting more of the business and less of the customer? And that's why it's good to work within a team, because then we can even challenge each other, because we're sitting within certain aspects where we deliver on what we know best. This is where I can be best leveraged. I can do this, but I'm an asset to you here. And if that fails, well, all the best. It's going to be a long project, and I hope you get some sleep and coffee.
Yeah. Okay. So it's more of having that relationship to facilitate an understanding of what it is then design is about, and what it is your role can deliver, what value you can bring to that organization.
Exactly.
All right. No, thank you for that.
Is there another question?
I have a question.
Mm.
So I've been a graphic designer for over 10 years, and I want to transition from that to more of a research side of things. How do I go on about it? I know they say UI, but I'm not really interested in on the UI side of things or the wireframe. I'm more interested in on the on the customer journeys and all of that. So how can one transition from graphic design, but still not losing the skills that I have on that to this side of stuff?
That is so cool, because you're moving from like, I always say that I don't understand what UI designers do. I get like it's interface, they make it visual, but I still don't get it. And that's where graphic designers tend to go. They go into UI. So you moving almost all the way to the beginning of the spectrum, which will be like your research. And so I would say that the best way that you can do it, I'm not sure if you've actually signed up with IDF, because they do have quite a lot of the courses that I did with them. I felt that they were very research orientated, where I was like, I know this is research, I know this. So things like knowing how to do an empathy map. The best way for you to actually finish this, and I would say start there in terms of your learning to know what the artifacts are and get comfortable. But as a researcher, the key skills is that, can you listen? Are you able to listen to what people are saying? And when you're able to listen, gather those particular insights, know how to document it, and then findings, and then turn it into insights from them. I guess my suggestion for you would actually be like, start from a design research type of role or project. So where you're either doing CX or UX research. UX research mainly being your interviews, doing user testing, your usability testing. So sitting with users and having them go through a particular platform and engaging on that experience. The more you talk with people and the more of those type of interviews you get, I've seen that actually turn people into amazing researchers.
Cool, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, I do see a question here about what are the CX certifications or associations in South Africa? I struggle to find local organizations. So I only know of one, and it is the CCXP that I believe that a number of our CX'ers who have accreditations have all gone through. I am going to be honest with you. I don't have an accreditation, and it's because of the cost. Like, it's expensive. What I do find is that you actually, why do you want an accreditation? Is it because it's going to push you up in terms of the job level? Maybe you're going to get a higher pay. Then I would say go for it. Are you also sitting maybe within the perspective where you are now no longer just doing journey maps and being a designer, but you're actually going more on the level of designing that maturity, providing maturity within a business from a CX perspective? I think that's where that education really is essential, because there is quite a big gap or lack of understanding. And so I would say maybe if you're moving more to like a management, a strategic level within creating CX in a business. So you're not sitting on just a project and that's your role, but it is an organizational perspective where you are helping to achieve the CX goals from that perspective. I hope I answered your question. If you want to have like just like a follow-up to that.
Just on a side note, even though so you don't necessarily need serious accreditation, but even if you focus on just some of the courses on the Interaction Design Foundation, they are worth looking at, because those are not like going and doing one of the random courses where you get a certificate of participation or some certificate that's not really recognized by other institutions. Most of the best companies actually do recognize those certificates. So companies like Adobe, I can't remember some of the other names, but a lot of the big decent companies look at IDF certificates as worthwhile.
Jenny has her hand raised.
Okay. Hi, Jenny.
Hi. Can I, I don't know how to put my hand down. I'm visually impaired, so I had to turn my screen reader off. So I'm just loving this conversation. I love the fact also you don't have an accreditation because you've got so much experience in your story, and which I think counts for a lot more than a piece of paper qualifying you. So I'm involved, although I'm visually impaired, I'm obviously a customer. And but I also I have my own business as well, which is awareness inclusion around consulting for inclusion of customers. So it's lovely to hear this difference between the UX and CX place, but because I think when you talk about, you know, visual spaces and you've got like visually impaired or people with dyslexia and people don't read a lot, whatever, it's quite interesting to you know, just for me, I feel quite sorry for companies sometimes when, as a disability community, we come across very harsh. We can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do the next thing. And I'm like saying, how do we help businesses really understand and say, come on, guys, give them a break. These guys are designing amazing things. And all they just need, you know, there's just a space for extra awareness. So, you know, as an entrepreneur and a business owner, you know, where would I position myself as in terms of, if I can say I want to just like dangle a carrot instead of complaining all the time. So I'm in between a user, a customer, and a storyteller about how inclusion affects a whole families of people related to people with disabilities. I'm not quite sure what my question is. It's basically, do you see a gap in the market for a business such as this?
Definitely. Like, Jenny, we're actually going to have Intabiling, I think a few weeks from now, where she's actually going to talk about disability and inclusion.
Yeah.
And she's a colleague of mine at Nedbank. But,
Yeah.
you know, I can tell you right now that when we often design from our own perspective, because we have our own lived experiences and it comes through in our design. So it is really important to have that empathy around who we are speaking to, and we know who these users are who are using our products. But also when we recruit, and this now I'm just speaking from a research perspective, when I'm creating a research spec, I'm not trying to talk to someone who has got some form of disability. I'm looking for the mass market, typical person, you know, with that profile who's hitting particular like checkpoints. And that's not okay, because that also means that we're excluding in our research from the beginning people who are potentially using our products. I know that the work that we, you know, the design teams at Nedbank, and because they're quite mature and we've got quite a big design team, there are pockets of them who are focusing, but generally it is more on visual impairment. But you can imagine that there are other like disabilities where you sit in, like from a servicing perspective, someone walking into a branch, someone walking into a retail store, what does that look like? But I think it's also the uncomfortableness about it that we don't challenge ourselves. We just don't. So yes, I think there's a gap. I think there is an awareness. I think that within the design teams that we form, we definitely need that voice, because I'm a CX'r, but I'm definitely not that CX'r who's also focusing on someone who might have a particular disability, because I simply don't have it. So I'm not even thinking in their perspective.
And I think also, you know, it's right that you don't, you know, I mean, you've got to be you. But I'm just thinking, like, as I've worked, as gone in, like, as a business owner, because people, when you're disabled, they expect you to be on the receiving kind of begging end of shame, you know, side. Let's, okay, we have to include the, you know, the disabled or whatever. And just to say, but, you know, there's a lot of creativity wrapped up within the disability sector that is not unlocked, I think, because of, say, as a new business owner, I'm going onto these business sites and GovChain and things that other visually impaired people don't usually go on. And it's like, oh, how do we get there? How do we, you know, do this myself? When it's, you know, so there's issues of accessibility, but it's also a story of, there's a lot of people that are kind of in between ability and disability who are not really included, like seniors, you know, starting to, you know, when you get into we said UX thing, you get onto a place to put a numpad, you know, they've got the QWERTY keyboard on your app instead of numpad. Anyway, I'm gonna stop on this now. Let's give someone else a turn. Yeah, so anyway, thanks so much. I've loved this. I've loved just hearing all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and I think it's important that we understand that.
I do think though that
Kat
it is designers. Sorry?
Kat and Jenny, Joe, sorry if I can just sort of jump in here. As a designer coming from the built environment, making a transition into UX and learning about UX and empathizing, you know, in the built environment, the sad reality is that catering for disabilities is always an afterthought. It is, it's mandated by statutory regulations, but it's always done as an afterthought. You know, let's just add a bathroom here because that will make it compliant, or let's just, you know, make sure this signage and that signage is included in this way and that way. But it's never done out of the perspective of the end user at the end of the day, which is quite sad, because usually these solutions end up incredibly impractical. So I think, you know, in a broader spectrum, something like what Jenny is proposing is absolutely necessary and important going forward, and creating a bit a more inclusive environment for customers and users and just everybody, general public, going forward. Yeah.
Yes, I definitely agree. We CXs generally like to use things like creating meaningful experiences. And I wonder that, like, we should actually challenge that, because what is meaningful? You could find there's an app, and I think it's called Be My Eyes. My sister got me onto it once, and you help someone who is either blind or they have some sort of a visual impairment in order to find certain things. And, you know, it uses your camera. You can look up into it. I'm not going to get too much into that, but I have to admit, being on one of those calls with the person and assisting them in order to find, or even like just pick, like, which is the blue blouse, the one on the left and the one on the right, and you tell them, or which one is my ID card? Is it this one or that one? I felt I was more useful, like, as a person than in what I do now, whether I'm, you know, working on some sort of a banking app or some social impact stuff. There, that person really needed help. That person needed a solution. That person was asking for help, and then they got it. And I think that's what we also need to challenge ourselves. Like, what are meaningful experiences? Can we actually create experiences that really better people's lives, not just actually get them to continuously, put their money with us? And yeah, maybe that's the area we should actually be getting into, especially since, there's so many of us who are in this conversation and we can advocate for it and share awareness.
Yeah, and I think what you said
Absolutely.
there, don't think that because you're working with a banking app that it's not helping people, because the freedom I get to be able to shop on my own or bank on my own, with my phone, that gives a kind of independence, freedom, and dignity. You only need Be My Eyes when you're so frustrated because the Jolly app isn't working that you need a person, and we're so used to depending on people. So when you're doing a banking app and there's aspects of it you do, just know that behind you're just doing it seems like an app and unpeople related, but behind there are bunches of people who are either going to be spitting and cursing or looking for their neighbors to do their banking, or people who are satisfied and feel dignified. Yes, I'm aging, but I can still press the buttons with my big fingers, that kind of thing. So just to say, don't think you're not doing people.
Wow, yeah. Definitely a lot of food for thought there. Yeah, I think we could definitely do better.
Absolutely.
Do we have any more questions?
Yes, Kat, sorry, it's Sanya here. I can't find my hands up thing, so sorry for that. Where do you find people to interview? Do you, do you digitally put a shout out? Do you literally walk into the street? Does it depend on the job? Where do you get your people? And how many people do you choose to do those personas? Is it 5 to 10 or is it 1? How many is enough in your experience?
Sure. Okay. So definitely haven't done research in about like 2-3 years, especially being really in depth into it. I'm very much sitting on receiving the research, but unless things have changed, which I'm kind of doubting it, there are companies who do specialize in recruiting people in. So for you, so they have a list of people or contacts, feelers out there who go out and network, and then they recruit people according to your profile that you're looking for. The persona, though, it will be developed within, say, maybe a focus group setting. Obviously, you want to get more of your qualitative information in order to develop your persona, and then you're trying to look at similarities that are coming across. How many is, I would say like work within a focus group setting. So having like your 8 to 10 type of people. But obviously you have similar demographics that you're getting out of there. What I do find is that you will have a bit of more of a direction when you realize who's the product for, because obviously there's always a target audience, there's a target consumer that the business is trying to speak to. And that's when you can start to develop the persona. Right now, I know it's more of an emphasis on an archetype as opposed to a persona. So a behavioral archetype in terms of understanding how people use things, what motivates them, how comfortable they are, as opposed to just getting, that demographic information like, hey, this is Susan. Susan is 28. Susan identifies with BMW. She shops at Clicks, that like kind of very like the skin of the person, what you see up front, but you want to get more of like the skeleton, as in is Susan most likely to use a USSD or an app? When designing for Susan, you want to make sure that your platform is instructive and guided because she wants to feel supported as opposed to feeling in control and do it herself. Does that answer your question?
Cool. We are out of time, everyone. I don't know if we should continue with questions now or rather pick up with a follow-up session. Just maybe if everybody who had outstanding questions can just tell me so that I can get a count. Is there anybody still outstanding?
I have one more question.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask, so if one has done like the research and like in terms of the saving all of that, how like when should they revisit their research again? How often should they be like interviewing people and getting new information? Because I believe with customer journeys, there's always new people coming all the time. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, so let's say that you've done a whole bunch of qualitative research in order to get you to a particular point, and then you've done your customer journey, it's there. So a customer journey map will definitely be like a living artifact. What is important is that you do put in a measurement component to it. So you might not necessarily have to do like such in-depth research again, but you could do like, get like the MPS for the particular experience, maybe at the end, or maybe you'll have areas like where you gauge the satisfaction of the customers, as you know, within certain points. So that can help you to know that, like, do you need improvement within a particular step or area within your customer journey without having to do the whole qualitative exercise all over again. And what I would say that depending on how big your journey is, because sometimes you do the end-to-end, or you might just like touch on a component, maybe let's say just like payments, when it comes to make a payment for this service or product, what is that journey? And that's all you're focusing on. So then maybe when there is a need for like a really big change, but it's the business that generally guides that we are now putting in a completely different new payments infrastructure. Things are changing in the back end, and we want to make sure, and this will probably be more on the user testing side, that this actually will meet our customers' needs and it won't bring about pain points. So yeah, so one, like, it's definitely about making sure that you have those measurements to see what success looks like, and then closing the loop, engage with your customers again, and that can be through a survey. It doesn't have to be through very extensive, like a qualitative focus group type of setting. But also allow the time to pass. I would say, depending on how big your journey is, you want maybe probably 6 months to a year. But once you start getting customer complaints, you can actually iterate. You can begin to iterate, because when you're working within a design thinking approach, you can continuously be changing things up. And if your business is also doing design thinking and they have taken on that human-centric way of design, they will also be prompting that we need to change this particular feature, or we need to get more customer feedback on this.
Okay, thank you so much, Katlego.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. I'd like to say thank you for joining the session. It's been valuable, and I think we've gotten some great feedback and great answers from Kat. Please reach out to us if you want us to have a follow-up talk, or if you just have additional questions, but we will post the presentation, the recording, and other material on our site at a later date.
Thanks,
everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Thanks so much. Thank you.